So I recently made this keyboard shell out of an old bed frame and a sheet of plywood. A church more than 2 hours away immediately bought it and ordered 2 more. A keyboard shell is meant to disguise a keyboard to look like a piano or organ on stage. They make lots of different types, and they can get pretty expensive. This one's meant to look like a Wurlitzer electric piano or a Rhodes. They make piano shells, and organ shells. This company makes really awesome Hammond B3 replica shells that are 2-tier. You can choose the stain, and they are really awesome. I use old bed frames, mainly because legs these days at the height that I need them at are pretty expensive. They can get up to $100 each at this height, so I use old bed frames, and because they're usually free, people are getting rid of them, or maybe 20 bucks, but use that and basically just a sheet of plywood. That's pretty much it. So this church ordered two Nord keyboards. One of them was an 88 key and the other was the 6 HP, which is a 73 key. So I take those measurements from the manufacturer's website and mark them on a sheet of plywood. I mark it like an inch or two bigger and 3 or 4 inches bigger in the back to allow room for the audio plugs and power plug. This is one of the greatest tips on YouTube I've learned, is to use this foam insulation board, or they call it project board, for under your sheets of plywood for when you cut. It makes it so much easier than using sawhorses, at least in my opinion. And yeah, it's like the greatest thing I've learned from YouTube. Thanks, YouTube. So after you cut them, you just sand down the edges, and if it needs it, sand the rest of it. But for the bed frames, this is part of the wood that I use also for the sides of these keyboard shells, like where the scoop, that little curved cut is, and sometimes for the top. So I use that part. I cut those areas. And then you're left with the wood and these legs, basically, and you cut them right here, and that's the part that I'll attach to the keyboard. Those will go away, cut those off too. And then these are going to be for the braces in between legs. I don't always do these, but it's, if you can, you should do them, because it just makes it that much stronger and doesn't wobble. Depends how big of a keyboard you have though. So this is the legs for the other, and you can see where I cut them. This is for the smaller keyboard. Now the sanding is really like the hardest part of this whole thing. It's just tedious to get in all the grooves. So then you're gonna rip, to use the table saw to rip these pieces to fit in those. These are the bigger of the legs, and this is for the 88 key keyboard, and that's where I cut it. And the big part is where it attaches to the keyboard base. I just use hanger bolts and a nut and a washer to attach them to the base. And this is after I ripped the brace parts on my table saw, and they just fit right in there. You might have to clean it out a little, and but they'll be glued in there. So after you get that cut, this is the shell. So you're going to cut 2 pieces for the sides with these curved cutouts, and then a back. And then I use plywood for the top and for the base. And there's the hanger bolts installed in the top of the leg parts, and this allows them to be taken on and off easily for transport. I had already started painting those black, but the customer did a change order and wanted me to paint them white. So this is after painting them white. I use a foam roller, a small foam roller, they use for trim or cabinets roller, and then just cut the rest with a paintbrush and do a couple coats, and then I also do clear coat over top, obviously. And for this project I used polyacrylic, the water-based polyurethane type stuff, but it's called polyacrylic, and the reason I used it is because it dries quickly, as I had a pretty short deadline on this, and the polyacrylic just dries really quick and allowed me to meet my deadline. And it looks really good. It's forgiving. It's pretty easy to work with, and this is the end result. Thought it came out pretty good. They were very happy with it. As you can see on the inside, I cut those holes for the wires to go down. So one's for audio, one's for expression pedal, and the other's for power. And this is what it looks like on stage. Making Recovery is a new project dedicated to those of us who have struggled with addiction and are in recovery to make a new life for themselves.